What if I told you that the modern world as we know it might never have existed? That the borders on our maps, the languages we speak, and the very concept of nations could have been completely different? Let's travel back in time, not to change one single event, but to reshape an entire era. What if, in the chaotic, fragmented world of the Middle Ages, Europe had united into a single colossal empire? Picture it. The year is 800 AD. Charlemagne, king of the Franks, is crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III in Rome. In our timeline, his empire was vast but ultimately fractured after his death, splintering into what would become France, Germany, and more. But in this alternate reality, this is just the beginning. Charlemagne's successors, through a combination of brilliant diplomacy, strategic marriages, and sheer military might, don't just hold the empire together, they expand it. Instead of 1,000 years of feudal lords squabbling over tiny parcels of land, we see a centralized power solidifying its grip. From the windswept coasts of Ireland to the sun-baked plains of Spain, from the cold forests of Scandinavia to the gates of Constantinople, a single banner flies. Let's call it the Holy European Empire. What would this unified continent look like? First, let's talk about governance and society. With a single emperor and a unified legal code based on a blend of Roman and Germanic law, the constant draining warfare that defined our Middle Ages simply vanishes. The endless back and forth between England and France, the rivalries between Italian city-states, gone, replaced by internal peace, what historians might call a Pax Europaea. This newfound stability would have a profound effect on the average person. Serfdom might fade away much faster. With fewer wars to fund, taxes could be lower and more standardized. The emperor, needing skilled administrators and engineers to run this massive state, would heavily invest in education. Monasteries, which in our timeline were lonely islands of knowledge, would become part of a vast state-sponsored network of universities, spreading literacy and learning at a pace unimaginable in our history. Latin wouldn't just be the language of the church, it would be the official language of government, commerce, and scholarship across the entire continent, creating a truly unified intellectual class. Now, let's consider the economy. With no internal borders, no tariffs, and no competing currencies, trade would explode. Imagine Roman roads, not falling into disrepair, but being expanded and maintained, creating a continental highway system. A merchant could travel from Lisbon to Vienna with a single set of customs documents and a single currency. This economic boom would lead to the growth of massive continent-spanning cities that would dwarf our timeline's London or Paris. These metropolises would be hubs of innovation where artisans, bankers, and thinkers from across Europe could gather and exchange ideas. Technological progress would accelerate dramatically. Without the fragmentation that slowed everything down, think of the printing press, the mechanical clock, or advanced shipbuilding techniques. They might appear centuries earlier. But what about religion? In our timeline, the Pope in Rome and the various kings of Europe had a complex, often adversarial relationship. In a unified empire, this dynamic shifts completely. The emperor and the Pope would likely form a powerful, symbiotic alliance. The emperor provides the military muscle to protect and expand Christendom, while the Pope provides the divine legitimacy to rule. This partnership would make the Church's power absolute and unquestionable. This has huge consequences. The Protestant Reformation, sparked by figures like Martin Luther challenging papal authority and supported by German princes eager for independence, would probably never happen. There would be no schism, no 30 Years' War, no splintering of Christianity into countless denominations. Europe would remain monolithically Catholic under the dual leadership of emperor and pope. This religious unity would be a powerful tool for social cohesion, but it could also lead to extreme intolerance for any dissenting views. Heresies would be crushed with the full might of the state, and scientific inquiry that challenged church doctrine might be suppressed even more forcefully than it was in our history. So, we have a peaceful, prosperous, technologically advanced, and religiously unified Europe. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, every coin has two sides. What happens when this behemoth looks outward? The Crusades in our timeline were a series of chaotic, often disorganized campaigns. In this alternate reality, they would be the full, focused might of a united continent directed at the Holy Land. The outcome could be vastly different, potentially establishing a permanent and powerful European kingdom in the Middle East. And what about exploration? In our history, the age of discovery was fueled by competition. Portugal sought a sea route to India to outmaneuver its rivals. Spain funded Columbus to get a leg up on Portugal. But in a unified Europe, this competitive drive is gone. Why risk a perilous journey across the unknown Atlantic when the empire controls all the overland trade routes to the east? The discovery of the Americas might be delayed by centuries. Let's imagine it's 1492 in this alternate timeline. Columbus, an obscure Genoese sailor, presents his crazy idea to the imperial court. They'd likely laugh him out of the room. The empire is rich, stable, and self-sufficient. There's no incentive for such a reckless gamble. So, the Americas remain untouched by European hands. The Aztec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations continue to develop on their own terms, their histories unwritten by conquest. North America's diverse native cultures flourish without interference. This changes everything. Without the gold and silver from the New World, the European economy develops differently. Without the potato and tomato, European cuisine is unrecognizable. And without the New World to colonize, the empire's expansionist ambitions would be directed elsewhere, perhaps south into Africa, or east, clashing with the great powers of Asia, like the Mongol successor states the Ming dynasty in China, or the empires of India. The world stage would be set not for a scramble for colonies, but for a clash of massive continent-spanning empires. And what about the very idea of identity? The concepts of being French, German, or Spanish wouldn't exist. Everyone would be, first and foremost, a citizen of the empire, a European. Regional cultures would surely survive, but they'd be more like the difference between a Texan and a New Yorker today, rather than distinct national identities. This lack of nationalism could prevent countless wars, but it might also stifle the rich tapestry of distinct cultures, arts, and literatures that blossomed from national competition in our world. Would we have Shakespeare, Cervantes, or Dante if there were no England, Spain, or Florence? Perhaps not in the same way. The art and culture of this unified Europe might be grand and impressive, but possibly more homogeneous. By the time we reach the 20th century in this alternate world, there would be no World War I or World War II, because there are no nations to fight them. But that doesn't guarantee peace. The sheer size of the empire could make it unwieldy, prone to massive civil wars if a succession crisis or a powerful rebellious governor emerged. The world would be a place of giants, where a conflict wouldn't be a regional war, but a global cataclysm. Science and technology might be advanced, but what about political thought? Without the clashing of nations and ideas, would concepts like democracy, individual rights, and self-determination ever take root? The empire might look more like a technologically advanced version of ancient Rome than a modern society. So, a united medieval Europe presents a fascinating paradox. It promises peace and prosperity on one hand, but risks cultural stagnation and authoritarianism on the other. It would have accelerated technological progress, but might have delayed the discovery of entire continents and stifled the birth of democracy. It's a reminder that history is a chaotic, messy, and unpredictable process. The very rivalries and conflicts that caused so much suffering in our past also forged the beautifully complex and diverse world we live in today. What do you think? Would you trade our world for this alternate reality? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring these historical what-ifs, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more journeys into alternate timelines. Thanks for watching.